My name is Ethan Cole, and 3 years ago, my own family laughed in my face when I told them I'd taken a minimum wage job at a grocery store just to survive. I still remember the sound of my brother Derek choking on his drink while my father shook his head like I had personally embarrassed the bloodline. My mother didn't even try to hide her disappointment. She just stared at me across the dinner table and said, "After everything we spent on your education, this is what you become? A stock boy." 22 years old, drowning in student debt, and stacking canned soup for $11 an hour while my younger brother drove a brand new BMW my parents helped him buy. That night changed something inside me. Not because they were disappointed, but because they looked relieved. Like they had finally confirmed I was the failure they always expected me to be. See, Derek was the golden child. He had the perfect smile, the business degree, the confidence. My parents worshipped him. When he landed a junior management role at a retail company, they threw him a celebration dinner so expensive I had to pretend I wasn't checking menu prices before ordering water. Meanwhile, I had spent 6 months applying for jobs after college and got rejected from every single one. No experience. Not qualified enough. Overeducated. Underqualified. Every rejection email felt like another brick on my chest until eventually, I stopped aiming high and took the only job I could get. Westfield grocery store. Night shift. I told myself it was temporary. Just enough to pay rent and keep my lights on. But my family treated it like a public humiliation. My aunt once introduced me at Thanksgiving as the cashier nephew. My cousins smirked whenever I talked about work. Even Derek started calling me minimum wage Ethan whenever his friends were around. And the worst part? I laughed along with them. Because pretending it didn't hurt was easier than admitting it destroyed me every single time. But none of them knew what was really happening inside that grocery store after midnight. None of them knew the owner had started noticing me. Or that one conversation in the stockroom was about to change my entire life. Everything shifted the night Mr. Bennett asked me a question no one in my family had ever bothered to ask. "What do you actually want out of your life, Ethan?" The next morning, I showed up to work pretending nothing had happened, but the laughter from dinner still echoed in my head. My sister's voice repeating over and over. 32 years old and still folding shirts for minimum wage. That's actually embarrassing. Even my father laughed at that one. Not loudly. Just enough for me to hear it. The kind of laugh that hurts more because it's quiet. I spent my entire bus ride staring out the window asking myself the same question I'd asked for years. Why was I never enough for them? The truth was, they only saw the name tag on my uniform. They never cared about what happened after my shift ended. They never asked why I worked late every night. Never wondered why I always carried a laptop in my backpack or why I kept taking phone calls outside the store during breaks. To them, I was the family disappointment. The daughter who never made it. By noon, the store was chaos. Corporate was visiting. Everyone was stressed. Managers running around fixing displays, employees rushing to clean shelves, district supervisors checking inventory like their lives depended on it. Then our store manager, Denise, stormed out of her office looking pale. Everyone to the front. Now. The entire staff froze. A black SUV had just parked outside the building. Corporate executives stepped out one by one in expensive suits, followed by security and assistants carrying tablets. Customers started whispering. Employees straightened their uniforms instantly. And then I heard Denise say something that made the entire store go silent. "The new regional operations director is here." People panicked. Because this position controlled every branch in the state. Hiring. Firing. Promotions. Budgets. Everything. I quietly removed my blue employee vest and folded it over my arm. Denise turned toward me, irritated. "Emma, what are you doing? Get back to work." Before I could answer, the lead executive walking through the entrance suddenly stopped. His eyes landed directly on me. Then he smiled. "Miss Carter," he said respectfully. "We've been waiting for you upstairs." The silence that followed felt unreal. One cashier actually dropped a scanner onto the floor. Denise blinked at me in confusion. Wait, what? I looked around slowly at every face staring back at me. The same coworkers who pitied me. The same managers who treated me like I was invisible. Then I said the words none of them were ready to hear. I'm your new boss. Silence. The next morning, I walked into Bennett Logistics wearing the same navy blue uniform I'd worn for almost 4 years. Same steel-toe boots. Same faded employee badge hanging from my neck. But everything felt different after what happened in the parking lot the night before. After hearing my own father laugh about my pathetic little warehouse job in front of strangers while my younger brother Ethan stood there smirking beside him, something inside me had shifted permanently. I was done trying to earn respect from people who had already decided I didn't deserve it. The warehouse smelled like cardboard, diesel, and coffee that had been sitting too long on the burner. Forklifts beeped in the distance while workers loaded shipments onto trucks. Normally, the chaos calmed me. But that morning, whispers followed me the second I stepped inside. Hey, isn't that the guy whose family owns half the city? Yeah, and he still works here making $18 an hour. I heard his brother drives a Porsche. I kept my eyes down and headed toward my station. Then I heard Travis. Well, if it isn't the millionaire janitor. A few people laughed quietly. Travis leaned against a pallet of boxes with that same arrogant grin he always wore around management. Seriously, man, your family's loaded. Why are you still working here like some loser? I looked at him calmly. Because I need a job. Nah, he said, shaking his head. You need self-respect. More laughter. Normally, I would have ignored it. But today was different. Funny, I said quietly. Coming from a guy who got promoted because his uncle golfs with the supervisor. The warehouse went silent. Travis's smile disappeared instantly. What did you say? You heard me. For a second, I thought he might swing at me. His face turned bright red as workers slowly backed away to watch. But before he could respond, the warehouse doors opened. 3 black SUVs rolled into the loading bay. Everyone stopped moving. Men in suits stepped out first, followed by a tall older man with silver hair and a dark overcoat. My stomach dropped. Chairman Victor Bennett. My grandfather. The founder of Bennett Logistics. And the most feared man in the entire company. Nobody expected him to visit warehouses personally anymore. Rumors said he barely left corporate headquarters unless something serious was happening. Supervisors rushed forward nervously. Sir, we weren't expecting. Clearly, Grandpa interrupted coldly. His sharp blue eyes scanned the warehouse until they landed on me. The entire room froze. Then, slowly, in front of every employee there, he walked directly toward me. The next morning, I walked into the office like nothing had changed, but the atmosphere felt different. Heavy. Quiet. People who used to ignore me suddenly stopped talking when I passed by. A few avoided eye contact completely. Others stared too long before quickly looking away. I knew why. The email from corporate had gone out at 6:12 a.m. Every employee in the building had received it before their morning coffee. Effective immediately, Ethan Cole has been appointed Regional Operations Director. My old coworkers had laughed at me for 2 years straight while I worked the customer service desk downstairs earning barely above minimum wage. They mocked my thrift store clothes, my old car, the fact that I stayed late cleaning shelves after my shifts just to earn overtime. What none of them knew was that I'd been quietly finishing my MBA online at night while sleeping 4 hours a day. And now, overnight, I wasn't sitting behind the front desk anymore. I was running the building. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. My new floor. The same floor security once stopped me from entering because employees like me don't belong up here. I still remembered the embarrassment burning in my chest while people watched me get escorted back downstairs like some criminal. Now the receptionist stood up so fast she nearly dropped her tablet. Good morning, Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole. Funny how quickly respect appears when power enters the room. I stepped into the conference room at exactly 8 a.m. 20 department managers sat around the long glass table. And right in the middle of them sat Brittany Harper. The loudest one of all. The woman who once handed me a dollar bill in front of everyone and said, "Here, maybe now you can finally afford lunch." The second she saw me, the color drained from her face. I placed my folder calmly on the table and looked around the room. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Pin drop. The conference room went completely silent after Mr. Holloway announced my name as the new Regional Operations Director. 20 pairs of eyes locked onto me like they were trying to figure out if this was some kind of joke. Just 3 months ago, those same people had laughed while I cleaned tables during my lunch break because my warehouse paycheck wasn't enough to cover Emma's medical bills. Now I was standing at the front of the room in a black suit with company documents in my hand while the CEO shook my hand in front of everyone. And Derek. Derek looked like he couldn't breathe. "You?" he finally whispered from the other side of the table. "This has to be a mistake." Mr. Holloway slowly turned toward him. "Actually, Derek, the mistake was underestimating one of the most qualified employees in this building." Nobody moved. Nobody even touched the catered breakfast sitting in the middle of the table. I could still remember every joke they made about me. The cheap shoes. The second job. The old car with the broken door handle. They thought working minimum wage meant I was stupid. What they never knew was that every night after leaving the warehouse, I was taking online business courses while sitting beside my daughter's hospital bed. While Emma slept connected to machines, I studied logistics, management systems, and corporate finance on my laptop until 3 in the morning. Because survival teaches you things comfort never will. Mr. Holloway handed me the final folder. "As of today, Ms. Carter will oversee all department restructuring." The word restructuring hit the room like lightning. 3 people immediately looked nervous. Including Derek. Good. Because they had no idea what I had already discovered during the audit. Missing inventory. Fake overtime reports. Thousands of dollars disappearing every month. And almost every trail led back to the same department manager who once threw my employee apron into the trash while everyone laughed. Derek's face turned pale as I opened the folder. Then I spoke for the first time since entering the room. "Before we begin," I said calmly, "there are a few things this company deserves to know." Pin drop. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Not the kind of silence that fades after a few awkward seconds, but the kind that presses against your chest and makes every breath feel too loud. My father stood frozen near the stage, his glass still in his hand, while the executives around him stared at me with expressions that had shifted from amusement to disbelief. Just 10 minutes earlier, they had been laughing while he mocked my old grocery store uniform in front of everyone. My son couldn't even keep a real career, he had joked. He stocked shelves while other people built companies. Everyone laughed because they thought the story ended there. They didn't know I owned the company that had just acquired theirs that morning. I adjusted the cuffs of my suit and stepped toward the microphone. My heels echoed across the marble floor as every eye followed me. My father's smile had completely disappeared now. My mother looked pale beside him, clutching her necklace like it could somehow save her from what was happening. "I think there's been a misunderstanding tonight," I said calmly. "Yes, I worked a minimum wage job. I stocked shelves. I cleaned floors. I unloaded delivery trucks at 3 a.m. while finishing business school online." I paused, letting the room absorb every word. And while some people were embarrassed by me, I was learning how companies actually work from the ground up. One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Another avoided eye contact completely. My father likes telling people I failed because I didn't become successful fast enough. What he doesn't mention is that while he was busy mocking me at family dinners, I was building a logistics software company out of my apartment. I looked directly at him now. The same company that purchased this corporation for $42 million this morning. A sharp gasp cut through the room. My father blinked rapidly. "You're lying." I reached into my jacket slowly and placed the acquisition papers onto the podium beside me. No, Dad. The signatures finalized at 9:14 a.m. today. I gave a small nod toward the stunned executives. Which technically makes me everyone's new boss. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the musicians in the corner had stopped playing. My father's face turned red so quickly it looked painful. You did this to embarrass me? I stared at him for a long moment before answering. No. You embarrassed yourself. I just stopped protecting you from the truth. My mother suddenly stepped forward, her voice shaking. Honey, we were only joking earlier. You know your father didn't mean. Stop. My voice stayed calm, but firm enough to cut through her sentence instantly. You don't get to rewrite this now. Not after years of humiliation pretending it was humor. The room stayed completely still. Pin drop.